Hey there, just wanted to do a little recording and a little bit of reflection, and it's been about a week since I recorded my last sort of vlog entry. It feels like it's been a month. I can sense or sort of remember in my last entry I was probably not in a good place. I was probably in a really difficult spot, and I kind of still feel like I am, but I feel that I'm a lot more, there's a little bit of centeredness there as well, a little bit of sort of presence or mindfulness. That was kind of absent in my last entry. I kind of feel with this recent Universal Credit telephone appointment, it really took a toll on me, on my health, and I think that's reflected upon my last sort of entries where I haven't really watched them back, but I can probably imagine I came across quite unwell, and it also just had a reflection. It probably wasn't easy watching as well. I don't think it was great, something that someone would like to watch, but it's strange because I don't make this for entertainment, but there's an awareness there that perhaps I'd like to create content that it doesn't make people feel worse than when they hit the play button. So I can imagine that's not going to be, even though I'm making this just for myself in some ways. Of course, it would be nice if anything that's shared here that helps others. But I also want to be quite genuine as well. I don't want to, this is not like a performance I'm doing. So yeah, it's a difficult balance to strike if I'm feeling really unwell, and those kind of videos can be tough to watch, I can imagine. So I'm not sure what to do with that at the moment, but yeah, I'm just kind of thinking out loud. So things, still quite difficult for me. The one thing I'm able to do is journal about it, even if the journaling is not really coherent, or it's not as clear and accurate as I would like it to be. As I mentioned, it's articulating myself is one of the really big stresses for me at the moment. It's one of the things that it's being affected the most with my health, to articulate myself, and it's also a trigger that it brings upon more sort of obsessive thinking to try and be more articulate, and it kind of triggers a lot of thinking, a lot of thought activity, and that leads to stress and becoming more sort of knotted in more in my head, and less less aware of what's happening. So I'm writing kind of daily at the moment, and it's not so much of like an account of what I did today, although often that's included. It's more out of desperation of trying to express how I'm feeling, to myself, try and put words to it, even if it's just sporadic little sentences, or a list of just, I think there's an entry I've put in there of just bits and bobs of, feeling really unwell, finding it hard to think straight. I can't logically analyze a situation. There was a kind of situation that happened, some text messages were sent, and there was some cancelling of plans, and I was trying to just analyse how I felt about that, how I should feel about that. Should should I be feeling frustrated or angry, or should I feel like something needs to be said? And as I started to go through the analysis of it, it kind of, all of the thoughts seemed to collapse, and I just forgot where I was, or forgot what I was thinking about. And I shared this with the counsellor, and she mentioned it sounds like this, you disassociated, that perhaps I was angry with the person or frustrated, and I was scared of my anger, or something was coming in to protect me. So I kind of journaled about that, and part of me journaling was also to be able to explain to people like Universal Credit, or potentially a psychiatrist, if I do end up seeing a psychiatrist. I kind of go back to that in a moment. So there's a big fear in me that I'm not going to be able to explain myself and my symptoms. It's going to be, and so I constantly try and write down things that I can refer back to. And today I had my counselling session in the morning, and it was helpful to read and share some of my journal entries with my counsellor and talk them through, because often when the session, counselling session happens, it's very hard to remember these things and to kind of sum up your week. So I kind of read little snippets of some entries, and it gave a little bit of understanding, things I wouldn't be able to say on the spot in session. So that was useful to have. So it feels like, I feel slightly calmer and slightly more centered, but it feels like things under the surface are very volatile, and it seems like it won't take much to kind of send me over the edge a bit. That's what it feels like, whether it's like a bad night's sleep or something that proves as a bit of a stressor that will kind of send me over the edge a bit. So I do feel quite fragile. So just an update on sort of Universal Credit and that process. Today I requested a fit note from the surgery. I'm due to be reassessed by Universal Credit as my health is declining, and I think that's kind of triggered a reassessment process. And as part of being reassessed, it's almost starting afresh, as if if I just phoned up Universal Credit for the first time and told them my symptoms. So I'm going to have a face-to-face assessment again, which I think I touched upon last week. And it was still difficult to write to the GP to request a fit note, because almost somehow I felt like I just felt paranoid that they'll think I'm like cheating the system or something by requesting a really long fit note, because obviously the process can take months to be reassessed, and I don't really want to keep requesting fit notes every few weeks, I want to do so less as possible, because it's quite a stressor for me. So it's trying to convey that you're not getting 3 months off work, or you're not asking for 3 months of free money. It's kind of a long-term illness I've been going through, and now the system is recycled, and now part of that process is giving a fit note, part of the automated system. So the GP I got an email saying they've left me a message on their website, but I just don't feel up to logging in today to look at it. I think I'll leave that for tomorrow now. Part of me really wants to look at it just to get it over and done with, but part of me I feel quite tired and drained today. So I've made that request, and also my counsellor sent a letter to my surgery today about the symptoms they've kind of seen in me and the potential diagnosis of complex PTSD. So she's kind of written a really clear letter about the symptoms I'm experiencing, and also I think she's written there that I need to be assessed. My mental health needs to be assessed. So I'm hoping that I get assessed. Whatever process that is, I'm not sure if it's a psychiatrist or I'm hoping that gets done, even though it's going to be really scary to get assessed, and that will be quite triggering for me to get assessed. I've had some bad experiences from having sort of mental health assessments. I've never really had a proper mental health assessment with a psychiatrist, but I've had them through kind of PIP and Universal Credit, where there's like a mental health nurse asking you questions and trying to get a gauge on how you are, and it feels like I've come across really badly. I've come across almost completely well, even though I wasn't well. I just felt, when you're in a situation you don't feel too comfortable in, it's kind of, you automatically feel guarded, and you feel like it's hard to relax and really let your feelings be transparent. You're kind of in this mode of politeness and answering questions, and in this automated mode of your brain automatically turns on to full power. So you try and in some way involuntarily mask symptoms, which sounds strange to say, but it's always like that's what I've been doing. So I'm a bit triggered with the potential psychiatrist of if that happens, it would just add to my trauma. I would say it would be quite traumatic if I come out of that and I'm not able to give an accurate representation of what I'm going through. But perhaps I'll kind of handle that when it comes up, and perhaps do some preparation and strategize a little bit of how I can clearly articulate myself, whether it's writing up symptoms on paper, having loads of written stuff with me, which is what I'm going to do with the Universal Credit assessment as well. I'm going to write lots of stuff down. So perhaps that's something I can talk through with my counsellor as well. When if a potential appointment arises for my health to be assessed, perhaps I can talk to my counsellor and prepare with their help. That could be a plan. So it feels like very much the way things stand with my health. I'm just taking things, not even day by day. In some ways, I'm taking it day by day, but also in some ways moment by moment. My mood can fluctuate within a day. It can feel suddenly, I can have a little bit of energy, then suddenly I feel completely deflated. So it's just acknowledging that and riding with it and trying to work with it as well. And I'm using some sort of, I'm using my practice for mindfulness and presence as best I can with that. And I watched a bit of Eckhart Tolle's video yesterday. And there's one kind of pointer he used about, not resisting anything, just being accepting of what's currently in the moment. And that really almost reset me a little bit. It kind of really helped to hear that. And I've kind of carried that through yesterday. It really helped me get through yesterday. And although it's fading a little bit today, where the pointer, it's been a little bit harder to be mindful today, but I'm just grateful that there's some relief there also. As I was walking home today, I've had some time I spent with family and there's a fair amount of social interaction or being around conversation, so I do feel quite wiped. I do feel quite a little bit dizzy and disorientated. That seems to be a common symptom for me at the moment with having social interactions. But on my way home, I was thinking about my health, and I had some thoughts and reflections about the fear of getting better. That's come up a little bit in my counselling session. It was shared there, and it feels like it's a bit to unpack. It's a bit complex. It's not just as simple as just a fear of getting better. I think it's the constant sort of getting a little bit better, then getting worse again, or getting better, or then getting worse than you were before. The constant to and fro of it. I feel like I think I described it in my journal as a bit torturous for me, where part of me, there's a bit of a tug of war. There's part of me just tired of it and just wants to give up and almost in some ways stay unwell, or of course I don't want to stay unwell, but part of me doesn't want to go through the trying to get better, then feeling a little bit better in my health, and then that collapsing again. So part of me is kind of a little bit is fighting in some small way, maybe a very small way, to try and improve my health and to try and get better. Another part of me is just wants to give up and is tired of trying to get back up and on my feet again and again. And it's a really difficult place to be. I think I described it as either I want to get fully better, or I want to just be clearer that I'm unwell. Because to be in limbo between the two, it's incredibly painful, and it's psychological. It takes on a lot of psychological stress as well, because in your mind suddenly you feel, I feel like I'm getting better now. Then you almost mold around that, thoughts and feelings, and then suddenly that collapses, and then you've got to get used to, no, I'm unwell again, or these ups and downs. I'm not sure if that's something you can relate to. So that's something that's really tricky for me at the moment, and it's quite disorientating and confusing, because it's hard to trust, and it's hard to build a foundation of that as well. The constant fluctuation, and there's also a big fear of that my health will suddenly improve during the time I get assessed, and then of course I'm going to come across that way that I'm actually getting better, and so my assessment will be based on that, and then suddenly after the assessment my health will disintegrate again, and but it won't be seen in that way. They won't, in the assessment they won't know, it won't be clear that I was really unwell before the assessment, and then suddenly I've actually got a brief window of feeling clear and well, but really they don't realise it's one of those times where I've kind of peaked, and then a moment of feeling well, or a day or two of feeling well, then several weeks of feeling really unwell, and I'm just afraid of that process. And so there's a lot of fear in that. It feels very like a bit of a tug of war, like one foot's trying to go this way, one foot's trying to go that way, and it's very tiring mentally. So there's a lot of conflict there about trying to get better, but also tired of the process of fluctuation, and the process of trying, and process of feeling better, and then that collapsing again. So there's lots of fears around that, and perhaps that will perhaps I can kind of elaborate or talk more about that in my next counselling session. Just to try and get it clear in my head, because all the things I'm sharing now, it's often in my head they kind of go warp speed, and then I'm unable to grasp it and process it and come to terms with it. It kind of goes through my head and then leaves me, but I'm left with almost like the remnants of those thoughts, and it's almost disorientating to kind of have like a shell of a thought, and you're kind of left without the substance for it. I think I I think I mentioned last week about like the reference of a library book, of, you know, or something. I used the metaphor about that, and you don't know which shelf and what aisle it belongs to, and you're left with something, and you don't know what to do with it. So it feels kind of like that. Yeah, so the two kind of tools at the moment are working for me is journaling. That seems like a good way of just releasing a little bit of pressure, a little bit of stress, in releasing thoughts a little bit that way, of just writing stuff down. And it helps overall my sanity, because it's kind of like, you know, it's something I can refer back to versus my memory, which is completely unreliable more and more. You know, it's getting worse. It feels like it's harder to, you know, remember sometimes stuff happening the same day, let alone what happened yesterday. So it helps just with the sanity of keeping a record of certain thoughts about my health and insights and understanding. So I'm grateful for that I've got the strength to write stuff down. At times when it's really severe, then that becomes too difficult, and I've had that recently as well. Certain days when I've just felt too unwell to write in a journal, and that's felt deflating. So I've kind of just tried to accept that. Yeah, maybe a quick update on my domestic situation with chores. I think I early on talked about washing dishes. I had a good day. Well, I tentatively say good day. My mood was really struggling, but I was potentially having a visitor who was potentially going to have someone visit me. So that's always a good push to kind of clean, because you know, for me, I feel when it's messy, I just feel really embarrassed and self-conscious. I'm sure a lot of us do. If someone's visiting, sometimes you feel like you want to have a clean space, and you don't want that to reflect on you if it looks messy. So I managed to hoover and mop the floor and wash the dishes. And so, yeah, my place feels quite tidy at the moment, and it does help my mood. When I just got in not too long ago, it was nice to come in and see things tidy, and see like the counters quite clear, to see the sink empty and or almost empty. So that felt quite nice. And I also cooked the first time in a long while. I cooked like a potato aubergine curry, and I also used some black beans in there as well, because I think I used too much potato. So I tried to compensate, added a tin of black beans to it, and I had that with some flatbread and also some salad as well. So that felt quite nourishing to have. I was quite grateful to be able to cook that, and that, because I'm living here alone, it's just me, so that will last 3 or 4 meals, so that's quite good. Yeah. Yeah, other than that, I think I'm going to try and just rest and recover. So it's been quite a long day in terms of seeing people. Like, I had my counselling session in the morning, and I did feel quite wiped out after that, but I also saw some family today. It's one of those days where it was like no cloud in the sky. It's completely a crisp blue skies, and I think as I sat outside looking, I thought, oh yeah, I like this. I like days like this where I don't mind the cold too much. So I was kind of learning about myself, really. I was thinking, oh yeah, I like I was acknowledging that I like the cold kind of blue skies when it's clear and sunny, and it's a little chilly, but it feels really fresh. So that was nice to acknowledge, and it was nice to get out and be outside. So I'm grateful for that as well. Yeah, I think I will leave it there. Thanks for listening, those who made it this far. And I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye.